You asked a question about certain terms that we were using. And in the trauma guide, kind of looks like this. We have some of these terms defined. And if you don't mind, I'll just use some of these definitions. When we talk about sensitive parents, what we're talking about are parents who meet the child's needs effectively and really promptly. And a sensitive parent also has what we call theory of mind. That is, they understand what that child wants or needs most of the time. Now, we all miss the mark from time to time, but what sensitive parents do is when they miss the mark, they try to fix it. We call that repair in the field. And so it's not that the parent is walking around as a sensitive parent going, oh, bootsy, bootsy, bootsy. You know, there's enough challenge for the child. They try to get them to grow up to be independent, but it's an independence where there's an underlying knowledge that they have people who are going to bat for them, going to go to bat for them the rest of their life. And it's an independence that's based on having roots, community. Okay, it's more like, instead of, you can't count on anybody, you're on your own. You know, so with sensitive parents, we have parents who really try to understand what's going on with that child. In teenage years, it's especially interesting because in teenage years, as kids are kind of doing that push-pull a little bit, sensitive parents stay really connected to their kids, try to understand what's valuable to their teen. They set limits that are definite. They enforce the limits with consequences, but they're not authoritarian, my way or the highway. Instead, they're authoritative. You know, I know more about the world. This is just how it's going to be, you know, and it's for your best. I know you don't always agree, and I would love to listen for a period of time to what you say and how you feel about it. I do care about your feelings, even if I don't agree. Okay. One of my teens one time said to me, I don't know if you agree with me, but I just want you to understand. And I listened. I said, thank you so much for sharing with that. You know, I do have a different point of view, but I'm so glad you shared that with me because I do care about your feelings. And that's a successful example of mine. I could give you unsuccessful ones too. Okay, nurturing is another term we use in the guide. It means that parents give comfort and food and attention in an open-hearted way, not in a begrudging way. They seem happy to care for the child. And what we found is that when we look at who gets better after trauma, sensitive parents and nurturing parents, their kids get better after trauma. You know, and we've looked at pretty much every study that's ever been done with kids who have been placed in out-of-home care. And those two things come up as the lead components of who gets better, who does best. Okay. And then I'm often talking today about parent. And what I'm talking about a parent is who's parenting that child. It could be grandma, it can be kin, it can be somebody who's an adoptive parent, it can be a parent who is a biologic parent. It's just who's the parent for that child, or carer, caregiver, I don't know. Carer just seems easier. You know, why put the giving part in, just carer. They care for the child. And often that's the person who's the parent right then. You also use the word regulation. I mentioned regulation before in another question, but regulation just is that idea of, can you keep yourself within a normal range with information coming in through your senses or not? You know, it's that balance. And the same thing for your moods. We have someone who's dysregulated. They might be irritable about the brightness here, or the background noise might bother them. It's hard to screen it out, especially if kids have been exposed prenatally to drugs or alcohol. And a way of thinking about alcohol in another country is one drink of home brew is like a shot of vodka. You know, that's according to Julie Bledsoe from the FASD clinic at the University of Washington. She's an international expert in FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Sorry for the alphabet soup here. And so you'd notice that just everything seemed like too much. Or for the moods, it's like they're exhausted after being out for a day. They have too much stimulation. In many of our kids, maybe they can do a half day of school when they first come into a home or a care setting, and then they need to just play for a while. They can't run to the store and then stop and pick up something from somebody else. You know, they really need to keep a very simple routine, because remember in an earlier question I talked about the wiring diagram of the brain is not sufficient. You know, they're just not wired up well. There's not enough wiring, because a normal range of activities with a caring parent just runs immense wiring. And if you want to know the one thing that runs the most wiring for kids after they come into a home or just anywhere, it's free play with you. And that causes more of the parts of the brain to be active and wire up, you know? So it's just an interesting sideline. When I talk about trauma, I talk in a more specific way about trauma than some people. When I talk about trauma, I talk about a very jarring, horrific event that almost anybody would find extremely upsetting. And I'm thinking of natural disasters, losing a parent, domestic violence, you know, people beating up each other in the home. And by the way, it's actually worse for the child watching a parent beaten up than if they themselves are beaten up. It's that much harder because they don't know what to do. They think they should do something. You know, it causes a lot of mixed feelings. But I think of those as trauma, and being without enough food, day after day, not just a little hungry. But as one boy said to me, when the firemen came to put out the fire that my mom set, he was living with a very mentally ill mother, he said, all I could think of is maybe they'll give me some food. He said, I feel bad, that's what I thought of. Okay, but you know, just that extreme hunger, that's trauma for kids. And for many kids, it's gone on over years, or being sexually abused by people who are supposed to be caring for them. And some people define trauma in a loose way, like being adopted is a trauma. Actually, it's not. It's an event that some people have very strong feelings about, other people not, but it's not a trauma. It is something unless it happens in a particular way. Does that make sense? Yeah. But you have to be able to start to process a trauma. You have to have some what we call resources, and those are some advantages, like somebody who's going to keep you safe, somebody who can pull you back to steady ground and that feeling of safety when you go visit trauma. And with the kids, a lot of times I say, oh, this is like we're going to take the spaceship, and it's a time-traveling spaceship. So, you know, maybe first I'll go to the moon with the nearest star, and then why don't we go back to the past, but let's be sure you can always get back again. So who do you want to go in your time-traveling spaceship with you, you know? And so we'll go back. Well, let's go back and we'll visit, but then you know you can always come back again. And let's take your mom. Let's take your dad. or I'll go with you. Does that make sense? But I mean, you can use different metaphors.